How many of you are about to start spring break? Anybody got spring break plans? What does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, yes? Oh, you're sitting at home. Got you. My bad, sorry. Awesome. Anybody got other plans, like more fun plans? Yes. That's boring. I mean, cool for you, but like, ugh. Anybody else? Wow, really? You're going to Orlando? Good for you. Good for you, yes. Seaside. Ooh, fancy. I want to go with y'all. No? I can't? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, right. So I had a recent vacation, actually last month, February. We decided as a family, like November of 2020, I'm getting my years mixed up, 2020, to go on this trip to the beach. My in-laws have this like little place they, share and all this kind of stuff. So we decided to go, and we were very excited as Christmas came here, and then the New Year's came here, and I'm thinking to myself, just a couple of weeks away. And as we got a little closer to the time, I realized something was building up in my life. In fact, I don't know if you've gone up to the middle school room up there. This is our new youth room for middle and high school. Take a look at it sometime. It's actually amazing. We were trying to put the final plans together, and it was happening right around the time we were supposed to go to the beach, and so work was piling up for me, and I started getting frustrated. I started getting anxious because I felt like I needed to be here, but I needed to be at the beach with my family, and then it's never fun when the rest of the team is working like a dog and you're sitting on the beach, it's not a cool feeling. And so I just felt bad, but then my kids were feeding off of my frustration too. My kids noticed that I was upset. My kids realized something's wrong, and so their behavior started getting real wonky the last week before we went to the beach. And then I started feeling shame that I couldn't be both places at once. And I felt regret for even scheduling the beach trip because I didn't want to leave Pastor Ken hanging, I didn't want to leave the rest of the youth team hanging, and I didn't want to leave the middle school students hanging with this new space. And so I get down to it, and I made this decision. I put my feet on the ground. I said, we're not going to the beach. I told my wife, we're not going to the beach. I had determined in my heart that it wasn't worth it keeping on planning for the future that I wanted to get here with all the frustrations that I was living in the moment. And if you're like me, then you felt frustration waiting on something that never seems to materialize. You have felt the heartache of wanting something to finally get here and it not seem like it will ever come. And this isn't just external things like prom or things that you've wanted to get here for such a long time and it's just not happening. This is also internal struggles, internal things that we wrestle with. Maybe you've been working yourself to the bone at school, trying to make the grades, trying to get the A's, trying to impress colleges and recruiters, and nothing seems to be panning out the way you thought. Maybe the college you wanted to go to doesn't want to see who you are. Or maybe those SAT scores that you're receiving back aren't the scores you were hoping for. Or maybe you've made wise choices. I know there are some students in here, and I know we talk about how to live for the Lord, but I got to say, some of you guys, and a lot of you actually, are making great gains in living for the Lord. And as a pastor, I am proud to call you my friends and my students and a part of this church. God is doing some amazing things in some lives in this room. But even when that happens, even when you're trying to serve the Lord and do the right thing, it doesn't seem like any reward or any blessing from serving God seems to come. And we start to wait for things, external and internal, that just doesn't seem to ever happen. And for me, maybe for you, it's easy to give up. It's easy to just say, forget it. This isn't worth my time, my energy, my cry, my prayers. None of it's worth it. I know I feel this way. And in fact, we have a leader, Miss Cian, who shares her story. Take a look at the screen for a second.
I remember when I had that desire to be married and to have a family. I felt felt like God had abandoned me. He was blessing everyone else. I saw all my friends getting married and having children. I was in a wedding, 6 weddings in 1 year. I remember my aunt saying to me, once a bridesmaid, never a bride. And I felt so alone and rejected, like almost like God had forgotten about me. I felt like it wasn't his desire for me to have a family and for me to get married. So I felt very ostracized by God.
I can identify with Miss Cian's story. And if you don't know Miss Cian, man, get to know her. She's amazing. But I identify with her story. Maybe you, in a sense, identify with her story. And this kind of theme reminds me of someone in the Bible, Joseph. In the early chapters of the Bible in Genesis, there's this story that just slams on the brakes of the rest of the story and gets to this young man named Joseph. And Joseph, the story of Joseph carries throughout the rest of Genesis from like the mid-30s all the way through. It's a fascinating read, a fascinating story. He was the second youngest of 12 brothers of this man, and he was the favorite of the siblings. And let me say, I remember when I was a young kid, I would go to my mom, and my sister and I would come before her, and we'd plead our case, and we'd say, Mom, who's your favorite child? And back then, she would look at us and say, which this is like what all the parents say, they say, honey, I love you. You both are my favorite for different reasons, right? And it's like, ugh, that's not true. Well, a couple of years ago, I brought my case back to my mom, just me and her, just a couple of years ago. I said, Mom, I need you to answer me honestly because you've been lying to me at that point probably 28 years, and I need you to tell me the truth. Who's your favorite child? And without skipping a beat, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, honey, you always knew I was your favorite. And I was like, yes. Here's the thing. I don't know if she's joking or not. I don't think she was. But the thing is this. If your parents say, oh, no, you're equal, that's a lie. That's a lie. And this story proves it. Joseph was the favorite of 12 siblings, and all the rest of the siblings knew it. And the dad would do things that would just make the other brothers so upset, so jealous. He would buy him the finest of clothes. He would buy him like probably the nicest of shoes, and no other brother would be able to even touch his style. And so the brothers get mad, and they devise this plan out of jealousy to do something extreme. They think to themselves, we're going to stop this. We're going to kill our second youngest brother, Joseph. Then they think to themselves, you know what? I don't have to kill the guy. All I have to do, I can actually make profit off of his life. So let's fake a death. Let's put him in a pit. Let's take a pig, that's what they did, cut its throat, dump the blood on the robe, take the robe back to the father, and say, Joseph's dead. And they weep and cry and have this funeral. Meanwhile, this is what they did. They took Joseph and sold the young man into slavery. But God was with Joseph as a slave. Joseph became the slave because of his favor among people, a slave to a very rich and powerful Egyptian political leader named Potiphar. And Potiphar trusts Joseph so much that he almost treats him as one of the family, to the point where Joseph performs his duties and Potiphar gives him the reign of his entire kingdom. He says, listen, you can do whatever you want with my stuff. You just manage it. I trust you. You have at it. And things were beginning to look good for Joseph. Things were beginning to look up. He probably looked around and was like, you know what? I know I was sold into slavery, but my life is a whole lot better now, even as a slave, than it was when my brothers were picking on me and accusing me of things I didn't do. So we read in Genesis chapter 39, starting at verse 6, something happened to Joseph. It says, we have it on the screen too. By the way, don't read ahead. Look at me for a second. I invite you to bring your Bibles. I know it's something it's like often we forget to do, but bring your Bibles with you to be able to look and explore what it says in the text in the written page. But Genesis chapter 39, starting at verse 36, he says, so Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. That's pretty nice. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Pause. Could you imagine that life? The only worry you have is, A, am I going to have a Houston's Hawaiian ribeye for lunch? Or B, a pecan-crusted trout fish from Stony River. That's Potiphar's life. Could you imagine? That was all he had to think about. Keep going. Joseph was very handsome and well-built, a good-looking young man. Pause again. This man looked good. He carried himself in a manner of high integrity, but also high good look. Like you're just a good-looking guy, right? I remember I was part of this musical when I was in high school. And I auditioned for the part of Joseph. And me and this other guy got like the last round or whatever, and they brought us to the director, and we sang. This is a true story. I was in 9th grade, and we sang our parts for Joseph. And I listened to him, and it's like, man, this guy's a good singer. And they listened to me, and they were like, wow, you're a good singer too. I feel like we were pretty equal. And she looked at us at the end and says, you know what, I've already made my decision. He's going to get the part, not Wes, because he just fits the mold for a Joseph. And I didn't know what they said until I read the story back to really understand the characters, and I got to this part, and my heart dropped. This guy was good looking, and of course, I was not. And so verse 7, it says, Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. It's never happened to me, but whatever. All right, and she says, come and sleep with me. Look at the gall of this woman. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. Verse 8, but Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held nothing back from me except you, because you are his wife. I have everything in the world. I have all the benefits of living here. But I'm not going to touch something that he hasn't given me. How could I do such a wicked thing, Joseph said. It would be a great sin against God. Notice he didn't say Potiphar. He said it would be a great sin against God. Because he knew that not only did Potiphar not give his wife, God did not give Potiphar's wife to him as well. Verse 10, she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her. And he kept out of her way as much as possible. Verse 11, one day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by the cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. Man, she's a thirsty woman. Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hands as he ran from the house. Smart man. Think he avoided that trouble? Nope. Verse 13, when she saw that she was still holding his cloak at first, she called out to her servants, soon all the men came running. Look, she said, my husband has brought this new Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, and he left his cloak behind me. She kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told him her story. That Hebrew slave you brought into the house tried to come in and fool around with me, she said. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. She was so bitter that she was rejected by Joseph that she accused Joseph of rape. And of course, Potiphar, I kind of don't blame him. He got so furious with the story that he throws Joseph into prison. So Joseph becomes a slave, not knowing what God's going to do, brought up and then brought all the way back down, crash, and he's now in prison. But Joseph, he continued to live in that prison, worried, but not losing heart. For me, I would probably have felt if I was in that prison, I would feel forgotten by God, forgotten by my family, forgotten by, of course, Potiphar, and no one to help me. But Joseph, he sat there in that prison realizing that he was not forgotten by God. And I'm not going to tell you how the story ends because there's two reasons. One, you can read the story for yourself because it's amazing. Go do that. Read the story for yourself. But two, the reason I'm not going to tell you the story is because that's not the point of the story. Ben, you guys can come on up. That's not the point of the story. I want us to feel for a second the experience that Joseph may have felt in that prison. Feeling rejected, feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling abandoned, and feeling cheated. This was not his fault. He did not deserve to be in prison. The question for us today is, what do you do when you're sitting in the dark, when you're waiting for help, when you're looking around for hope, and you're uncertain for your future? Because when Joseph was there, we can take some cues from Joseph's life. When Joseph was sitting in that prison, Joseph realized that God had a plan about this whole thing. Everything that was happening to Joseph, there was a plan happening that he could not see, but he had the faith to believe it. God was faithful to Joseph. God was listening to Joseph's cries. Don't think for a second when you cry out to God, as we talked not recently, when you cry out to God that he's deaf to your prayers, he's listening. In all that time, God never gave up on Joseph. And when you're sitting in those prison moments, God's never giving up on you. And if you're waiting on God right now, I want you to understand, do not give up on God, because he's not given up on you. He's not given up on you. The failures that you've brought before God, he doesn't look and say, that's not my problem. I'm sorry. God made your sin his own problem. God made your lack his own lack. God made the punishment for you the punishment for him. And so if this is the God that we serve, the God who would come from heaven just to be nailed to a tree and die for sins of people, do you think that he's rejecting you in your pain? Do you think that he's leaving you alone in your isolation? Do you feel like he's abandoned you in your prison? No, he's not. He's not. So when I sit here and I preach these kind of things, this idea comes to my mind of like, man, this sounds good. This is all great. But what do I do? What do I do with the information? That's something that I want to extend to you. So I was praying for this moment right here, and I asked God, what would you like me to say now? Because my message was over, but I feel like my message shouldn't be over. What do I say? And God told me to give some things that you could write down yourself. Very simple things. Let me walk through them. One, when you feel alone and abandoned, when you feel like you're tired of waiting and the waiting period is over and you just want to jump the gun, listen, talk to God and don't stop. Inquire of God and don't stop. Air your grievances to God and don't stop. Let him know how mad you are and don't stop. Let him know what you need from him and don't stop. Call upon the name of the Lord, because he wants to deliver you from where you are. Number two, talk to other people. What we have is something very special in this room, because we have family, we have friends, maybe you have grandparents, leaders in your life, but we also have one another. I encourage you for a second, just kind of glance around the room for a second. We are here for one another. We're not doing this thing alone. And let me tell you, I'm here for you. There are some of you who have actually taken me up on that, where you'll come to me and call me and talk to me. I'll give you my number. And some of you hear me say that, but I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm here for you. If you look at some of the leaders in the back, they're here for you. Missy Ann is here for you. Mr. Brad is here for you. Mr. John is here for you. Mr. Anthony is here for you. Miss Jillian, Miss Jen is here for you. Mr. Todd is here. We are here for you. Talk to God and don't stop. Talk to other people about what's going on. Don't keep it inside. And remember that God is stronger than you think He is. I love this scripture in Isaiah 40. This is a paraphrase. Listen to what it says. You don't have to look at the screen. Just listen to this for a second. Close your eyes for a second. Listen to what God says. He says, God doesn't come and go. God lasts. He's creator of all you see or imagine. He doesn't get tired out. He doesn't pause to catch his breath. And He knows everything inside and out. He energizes those who get tired. He gives fresh strength to dropouts. For even young people tire and drop out. And that's a true statement. Young folks in their prime stumble and fall, but those who wait upon God get fresh strength. God is more powerful than you think He is. Keep it in God's hands. That's my next thing. Keep it in God's hands. When you hear the story, maybe you identify not as Joseph, but as the brothers. And you're tired of seeing everybody else get promoted like Miss Cian. You're tired of watching everybody take the next step. And you're sitting there and you think, my turn's coming, but it doesn't ever come. Maybe you feel like you're the outcast of your family, the outcast of your friend group, the lowest on the totem pole. God sees you. The problem with the brothers wasn't that they got jealous. Yeah, the jealousy came because they wanted to take control out of God's hands and put it in their hands. Keep the control in God's hands. And finally, choose hope. Hope is a very interesting thing. You can actually choose to have hope. It's something that's granted to us, but we can also transform our mind, transform our thinking, write down Romans 12, 1 and 2, renew our minds so that we can think on things that bring us hope. It's an active choice that you have to make. We choose hope when we talk about our struggles rather than just trying to cope with them ourselves. We choose hope when we tell God how much we really need Him. We choose hope when we decide not to give up no matter what. Because if you're waiting on God, do not give up. Do not give up this morning. If you're watching online, we welcome you. We're glad you're on. Those of you who are here in person, of course, I'm so glad you're here. We've provided something that we want to throw on the screen. This is a QR code that we want you to take a look at. Before you take your phone out and scan it, let me explain what this is. This is 4 questions that I want to hear from you. Our team wants to hear from you. Our leaders want to hear from you. We've provided a place to hear what's going on, how you're doing. So in just a second, when I say go, I want you to take your phone, I want you to scan this code, and I want you to just kind of honestly just give us your feedback. Let me say these things are completely anonymous. If you're watching online, you can go down to the comments below, and you can click on that the link in the comments, and you can take this as well. We want to hear from you. Pastor Kalen's going to maybe sing just for a second. Take a moment for a second and reflect on this. Let me add one last thing to this. Please don't give me one-word answers. I know it's easy to do that, but think through it for just a second. Go ahead, take your phones out, scan it, and let's hear from you. If you have any issues with your phone or whatever, let's have Mr. Anthony or Miss Jillian can help you.
Peace be still, say the word, and I will set my feet upon the sea till Peace be